Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including John B., Jeff S., Sean M., Jack T., and Jerry G. On the program today is a returning guest and one that we're pleased to have come back and update. Mr. Keith Bodnarchuk is back with us for this episode. Keith is the president and CEO of Cosa Resources. The company is focused on uranium exploration at Canada's Athabasca Basin with a portfolio of prospective uranium exploration grounds, including its current focus on its 100% owned Ursa uranium project, which the company is currently executing a drill campaign on the ground. The company has a number of other projects in the basin as well. Cosa Resources is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol COSA and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol COSAF. Keith, it's great to have you back on the podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to be back.
Good to talk to you, Keith. You guys are active on the ground with a few things here, and I'd like to get right to that, the drill program that's in progress at the Ursa project. Any updates for us on how work is going at the site and when folks can expect some results to start flowing in?
As you mentioned, we are currently undergoing a drill program at our 100% owned Ursa project. As you know, with any junior, the biggest catalyst for us is the drill bit. And if we are able to have some technical success here during this drill program, that would obviously set our company up tremendously heading into 2025. Ursa project, for a reminder to your viewers, we did drill it in March of this year. We hit some exciting results at our Kodiak target area. And so that was the initial focus of this follow-up campaign here. We just began drilling at end of August, early September. We will be drilling throughout September into October. Like I said, the initial focus will be on that Kodiak target area where we hit in March of this year some interesting structure and alteration, which could potentially represent an alteration halo, which are often associated with these uranium deposits. And we also have another area that we're heading to called Grizzly. It's one where the past operators obviously identified it as somewhat of an interesting area. It had elevated uranium geochemistry throughout the sandstone, and it's really something that you look for when targeting is this elevated uranium. As our senior geologist always says, the easiest way to find uranium is with uranium, which is funny as that sounds, it's actually true. And so that's an interesting target area that we will be drilling. So I think it goes to show, even though Ursa is somewhat of a underexplored project, it really goes to show how well our technical team has done to generate these strong of targets so early on, but also goes to show how prospective of a project Ursa is. So we have those two exciting areas. We also completed ANT, which is a passive seismic over top of the Ursa project, and that will also be helping us during this drill campaign. And so this is the most exciting time for a company like us when the drill bit's turning. You're testing these great targets, and you do have the opportunity to potentially make a game-changing discovery.
Keith, and talk about production rate, what you guys have planned there in terms of total meters and just overall that production rate, what it takes to drill out a hole, roughly,
Yeah.
depending on, of course, what depth. Talk about that specifically, and then also results will come out in succession as you guys progress. At least that's hoped. Talk a little bit about timing there.
Yeah, we are drilling up to 4,000 meters. It'll be about a 2-month program in total, I would say. And so that will take us into mid to end of October. As far as news flow, look to be updated, in October. And then obviously any sort of geochemical or geochemistry or assay results would be, closer to November. I think we'll try and update the market as much as possible throughout this drill program. And as far as production rate, we are in a deeper part of the basin here. So the focus is on that Kodiak target area where you're looking at, that 1,000-meter drill hole. We do have other parts in the project that would be closer to 700 meters. And so, that is really the focus, and the production rate, like I said, will be, a couple months to complete these 4,000 meters.
Okay, very well. What can you tell us about what will be put down at Grizzly in terms of depth and total meterage?
It should be similar. It might be slightly shallower than the Kodiak target area. As I mentioned, something interesting about Grizzly is that it was the last hole that was completed by the previous operators. That was in 2002. They drilled a hole in the mid 90s. They obviously saw that that hole had interesting stuff. And so at the very last hole, they did follow up the drill hole CR06. You can even look through the past reporting. They did flag it as an area that needed follow up on. But, the company at that time, I guess it was Kojima. Kojima eventually became part of Orano. And so their focus shifted from no longer exploring in this area back towards Cigar Lake and other areas like that. So it is one of those targets that have just been sitting there really for 22 years. It has all the ingredients you look for in a potential discovery. And like I said, the previous operators did flag it as an area that needed following up on. So we're excited to head back there. Target depth, will be somewhat similar to Kodiak, maybe a little bit shallower. But it's another exciting target that we weren't able to get to in March and April. And it just goes to show, especially how early on we are in exploration at this project, to have these strong of quality of targets, is significant. It's huge, and we wouldn't be out into this area of the basin if we didn't think we had a great opportunity, to make a discovery. And so that's why we're willing to go out into these deeper areas, because of the quality of targets that are sitting right there. And at the top of that list would be one like Grizzly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have back on results here, Keith. Appreciate you
Yeah.
guys doing a little bit of maverick work here and trying some of unconventional approaches on some of this. And with that, it looks like this will be concluded. Let's call it December or something like this. Everything will be concluded, and all results, assays, hopefully will be in hand, assuming the assay lab's not too backed up. But subject to some success here, Keith, what would you expect to be working on over the winter period in order to gear up for a potential follow-up program, or perhaps work on some of the other projects in the portfolio? Just give us a little bit of a layout based on some success here.
Yeah, certainly. So, the focus is on this Ursa area and Kodiak and Grizzly at this point. The ideal outcome, targeting these areas would be to generate more follow-up targets. But you got to remember too that we do have 10 target areas at Ursa. This is truly a district scale project. We've really started to scratch the surface on the potential of this project. So Ursa will remain a priority for us heading in 2025, no matter the results we get here. We also just completed an A&T survey over about 27 kilometers of that trend. The A&T survey, it will be showing some interesting targets that we could potentially follow up on this program and heading into 2025. But we also like to always keep a pipeline of projects, a pipeline of drill targets. So we did complete airborne geophysics over top of our Aurora and Orbit projects. We also did A&T, which was that passive seismic, which has been successful at identifying alteration by some of our peers all over our Orion project. So we do like to always keep that pipeline. We'll always go to where we think our best targets are. Aurora and Orbit, target depth there is, could be 100 to 150 meters. So it's a good counterbalance to the depths that we're trying at Ursa. Ursa, like I said, does have the strongest targets in our books, but we are still waiting for those results from Aurora and Orbit. And come early 2025, if we see interesting results from our geophysics we did there, we'll head to Aurora and Orbit. We won't get married to the one project. Ursa is definitely not a flagship. Until we do have that success there, we like to go through our projects, rotate through them. We've always taken that strategy, even date back to our days at ISO, when obviously we had success. The team had success and found Hurricane on the very first hole at the Rockies project, but it was the seventh project. And so that's why we always have that pipeline of projects. That's why we'll have drill targets ready at Aurora, Orbit, Orion in 2025. And that's why we're always looking to also add to the project pipeline. If there's opportunities where we think we can really upgrade that through some sort of transaction, we will, because it does seem like you do have a lot of projects in a lot of different target areas, but you can go through those quickly, right? We're looking for the next tier one size deposit. And so if your project is not showing what you want and it doesn't think like it's leading towards that, you move on to the next one. We've always taken that approach, and I think it's been very successful for us in the past.
It absolutely has been, and it makes sense to do that. And I do like the attack on looking at all deposit types, the deeper deposits, and then also the more shallow, nearer to surface deposits. So I appreciate you guys looking at that and taking a blended approach there. I think that makes sense until you're able to dial in where things go, and there's no reason to eliminate any of this portfolio until you guys come on to something that's substantial where you can, you're not able to focus on some of these other projects. So I appreciate the thoughts there on process and strategy. Just with capital structure, Keith, of course, subject to potential discovery success on this current program that's underway, what do you expect on financing needs into next year, as well as where we stand presently on shares outstanding currently and any major shareholders you want to highlight?
Yep. So we entered this drill program with just under 5 million Canadian in the treasury. We'll be deploying obviously a couple $1 million for this drill program. We will finish the year with money left in the treasury that can take us through a drill program at an Aurora or an Orbit or potentially an Ursa for Q1 2025. So we are fully funded for the remainder of 2024, and it could take us into 2025. Shares outstanding, just under 57 million. We remain very tightly held. Our team, controls about 23% of the stock. We do have, I guess, long uranium funds that control about 30% of the stock. It is tightly held, and I think we've done a great job. We've been fortunate with timing. Obviously entering into what looks to be a long-term uranium boom. And when we put this together, we're fortunate that we were able to get the projects we were ahead of that really rush into the Athabasca Basin. But we've done a good job, I'd say, of maintaining our capital structure and making sure that we do bring in those stronger shareholders. And you'll see our group continue to buy on market. I think you saw our chairman Steve over the summer. I think he added an additional 100,000 shares on market. I was buying over the summer, and so any chance we get, we all believe that this is just the start of what we're building here, and any opportunity we get to add on market, we will. We participate in every financing, and we'll continue to do that. We believe this is just the start of what we're planning to build here at Cosa.
And you can certainly include SmithWeekly Research as one of those uranium funds as participation here as well. So we're proud to be a holder of this as well and see a lot of potential here. So I appreciate your comments on that. Keith, other events here, the company acquired further grounds on the Orbit project to increase the holdings there. Talk about this transaction and why it was important for you guys to get this additional piece.
Yeah, no. So on the east side of the Athabasca Basin, obviously, there has been some success recently with groups like 92 Energy, who did discover the GMZ zone on the very eastern side of the Athabasca Basin, which was, previously overlooked. And so I think that really upgraded that edge of the basin. And that's why we ended up with that Aurora and really that Orbit project. As groups continue to make discoveries in really these unloved areas, you go back to Fission and NextGen, or really what Canalaska has been able to do here, even going back to Hurricane. I think it just goes to show how well endowed this Athabasca Basin is, and that there's not just one way to target these things for exploration. You have to adapt. You have to head into these unloved areas because, there is good opportunity that still exists. And Aurora and Orbit are shallow targets, 20 kilometers away from the Key Lake, the currently operating Key Lake mill, easy access. And so, it really provides us with, more a cost-effective exploration project in a great location that hasn't seen much exploration. Really, Orbit's never even seen a drill hole. Aurora hasn't seen a drill hole since the 1970s. And so I think, these are areas where we can really kind of deploy these new strategies that groups are doing, as far as heading into, like I said, these unloved areas that do have ingredients that can contain a uranium deposit. They just didn't fit the old exploration model. And so, that's why we were excited to get it. That's why, we were able to complete an acquisition with Sky Harbor. I have a relationship with Jordan, and it just made sense to expand our footprint in that area, because it does provide a counterbalance to the deeper targets that we have at Ursa. Having these, shallower, lower cost targets that will be ready for drilling in 2025.
Appreciate your thoughts on how you see those and some of the potential there with, I guess, non-traditional areas to look here for potential deposits. And Keith, I guess just with that, within Canada, as you guys continue to evaluate projects, and of course, if the right deal did come along, is there any interest outside of the basin and maybe even outside of the province within Canada, or do you see that it makes sense to only stay in the basin?
When we set up Cosa, we started to really scan the entire planet for projects, uranium projects, really looking in almost every jurisdiction. And, what we found is we kept coming back to the Athabasca Basin because it is home to the highest grade and best uranium projects in the world. And, Saskatchewan is such a great jurisdiction to operate in. It's not only do they allow uranium mining, they actually embrace it. And so that's such a huge advantage. I think you look at other commodities where you do have to take those big jurisdictional risks to go after, say, high grade nickel or high grade copper. You might head to an Africa or other places like that where you do have a bit more of a jurisdictional risk. Whereas we're fortunate that the best projects, the highest grade projects in uranium, are sitting in such a stable jurisdiction in Saskatchewan. And so our focus is the Athabasca Basin. That's, where we've had a tremendous amount of success. That's where our skill set is best suited for. So I think, our focus remains on the Athabasca Basin because, I think that's the area where we can eventually deliver the most value to our shareholders.
Yeah, there's lots of work to be done with the projects you guys do have, and you already have that pipeline. And we'll see what happens here in the future and see what other developments happen within Canada on uranium exploration and even development to some degree out there as well. Keith, just back to where you guys are predominantly, across some of the projects here, you guys are utilizing local community and have engagement with community members, and Ursa is one of those areas as well that's happened. Cover off maybe some community efforts that the company is doing at this early stage, of course, to inform local community about mineral exploration and the benefits of that, as well as utilization of local service providers and even job development opportunities nearby the projects.
Yeah, and so we are very transparent with local communities. We do keep them well informed as far as what we're doing. We'll hire locals, whenever they are available to help us out with our projects. There's a tremendous workforce that exists up in northern Saskatchewan, very skilled workforce that can really contribute to your projects and to advancing your projects. And so I am originally from Saskatchewan, and I always take pride in being able to deliver jobs into that part of the world. And so I think our whole team takes pride in that, and really, this uranium boom that I believe we're at the very beginning of. I think it should be uplifting for everybody that's involved in this entire process of uranium all the way through discovery and production. And so we take pride in that. We try and really work with the northern communities in order to provide a bit of a windfall for them if we do have success, right? And so I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I think that's the way to approach it. And early days for sure for folks, especially like Cosa, but always makes sense to get that alignment early on, and also getting people on the right foot for how mineral exploration works and how it really enriches community. And there's always challenges because you've got these counterparties out there now that are seeking to interrupt third-party interruption with these dealings, and that comes from these NGO environmental groups that are purely mandated to just simply disrupt and misinform. And so it's always good to see that those efforts are definitely a very important component in these days for sure. So appreciate the comments on that. But one other thing, Keith, just back to the bigger uranium market here for just a moment. Any thoughts on the market as you see things and some of the events that have unfolded in the past few weeks? And then also just sentiment for the juniors out there. What are your thoughts on that front?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it was a quiet summer for the uranium space. It was a quiet summer for the entire sector. And I think what you're seeing now is a lot of positive catalysts that keep occurring in the uranium space, which were somewhat expected. Obviously, things positive news coming out of China, continue to permitting record amount of reactor builds. You see Kazatomprom really talking about not being able to meet production expectations and not even giving a prediction for 2026. All this stuff just kind of adds to that supply and demand fundamentals where demand is on projection to increase to record levels. Sentiment is changing with regards to nuclear power, and really countries are investing a lot of money into developing these nuclear reactors, small modular reactors. All that stuff is just positive news flow from the demand side. What you're seeing on supply side is a sector that's coming out of a long-term bear market where it's a struggle to get new projects across the line. It's a struggle to get old projects into production again. It's been very undercapitalized, so there hasn't been enough discoveries. And so this is creating somewhat of a perfect storm, which I think we're at the very early days of, where you have this really increasing demand, more demand than people anticipated, and you have supply that's going to continue to struggle. And so I think we're in the early days I think there will obviously be ups and downs. I think you haven't seen the junior space really participate in this uranium boom yet, which is somewhat expected in these uranium booms. You'll see, groups like Cameco obviously get that first uplift, and as the uranium market continues to undergo this bull market, what you'll see is that capital start to trickle down to companies like Cosa. When they see that a Cameco is already really highly valued, it can come down to groups like us. And, for us, we always have that opportunity for that technical success, but we also have built a very tight cap structure so that when the capital does start to come down to companies like us, you will see a re-rate. I'm very excited about what's happening in the uranium space. It does seem like it's very early days of a long-term bull market here. And so I think we're greatly positioned. The drill's turning, we have great projects, and we continue to have a lot of news flow that will carry us into 2025 and beyond.
Keith, excellent. Appreciate that. It's been a tough market, but it's been productive, if I can say that. I know a lot of people don't agree with my thinking there, but it has certainly been a productive time period here, and it's good to see the healthy correction. And that correction comes with pain, and that's just part of how it goes. And of course, you always have the financing challenges as a junior, and that's always a significant tightrope to be able to get right most of the time. So certainly things are perking up here. There's obviously some headwinds that are outside the uranium market and unrelated that still affect investor capital and the flow of funds, but we'll see how those things resolve or play out really over the next, I would say, 8 months' time, with some of the stuff maybe resolving any much quicker than that, maybe within a month or two. So we'll see what happens on that front. Well, Keith, short of any other comments that you wanted to bring up here, I'd like to leave it there for now and ask you these final questions to wrap up for potential investors who are listening in on this one. The company has a market capitalization of about 17 million Canadian dollars. Why should Cosa Resources be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors portfolio at this stage?
We're a team that's been part of multiple discoveries in the past. We've delivered a lot of value to our shareholders, whether it's through Denison, NextGen, ISO Energy. And that was in really against what was not a very strong uranium market. So we have been able to deliver value even in a bare uranium market. And we have the assets we really like. We're currently drilling, which is always the biggest catalyst for any company like ours. And, we're fully funded for the rest of 2024 into 2025. And so lots of news flow, great looking targets, and a team that's done it multiple times.
How can interested parties get in touch with the company?
Yeah, so you can log onto our website. We do have an email that you can contact us on. We also have a mailing list you can sign up for if you want to be up to date. And, obviously you can reach out on Twitter, other social media, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have, or, even potentially schedule a call if you're interested.
Keith, we appreciate the update and looking forward to the near-term results at Ursa. Thanks for the time. And of course, you're welcome back anytime to update. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Always great to be here.